If I told you that the perfect family overland vehicle is hiding in plain sight and it won't break the bank, let me introduce you to the first generation Toyota Sequoia. Let's dive into why this often overlooked SUV might be the ultimate value in an overlanding vehicle for you. Coming up, I've built 2 overland rigs in the past 10 years, both being trucks, each one teaching me something new. With our family growing and our adventures revolving, I thought it was time to try something a little bit different. This time I'm jumping into the SUV world, and I really believe that this 2005 Toyota Sequoia is going to be up to the challenge. With 2 young boys and a 75-pound dog, it leaves me scratching my head how to make everybody fit. The backseat of the Tundra is starting to get cramped, and I don't know how much I like the idea of putting the dog in the truck bed camper area for longer trips. In search for my ideal platform for the next build, I came across a few things that make the 2000 to 2007 Toyota Sequoia just stand out. It's affordable, it's reliable, it has cavernous interior space, it's got a decent amount of off-road capabilities right in stock form, and there is a large amount of community and enthusiast support with a decent amount of aftermarket support coming from some of the bigger brands, but also some more of the cottage industry, smaller producers making things that you can modify and upgrade to these vehicles. Well, I've reached the end of this road. I found a surprisingly healthy supply of these vehicles on the market between the $4,000 and $8,000 range, and in comparison to some of the more commonly modified vehicles in the Toyota lineup costing $20,000, $40,000, in some cases upwards of $60,000 to $70,000. These things will give you a huge amount of value, which leaves you a ton more room in your budget for modifying and outfitting these 4Runner adjacent monsters. It's a Toyota, so it's going to be reliable if just some of the basic maintenance was done and it was generally taken care of. It's got the 4.7 liter V8 engine, so it has just that little extra get up and go that a lot of the other competitors in the lineup, 4Runners, Tacomas, yada yada, just don't have. It's nice to have that V8 power when you need it. In 2005, the 4.7s were upgraded to a VVTi, variable valve timing version of the 4.7 engine, as well as a 5-speed transmission from the previous 4-speed. Between the whole 7 years they were produced, a little bit more power and torque in the later years, but I honestly think that if you got something in the previous 2000 to 2004, you'd be just fine, especially considering that re-gearing these things is totally an option down the road if you feel like you need some more torque or get up and go. Honestly, going with one of those pre-2005 models, you might find a little bit more availability in the market and a little bit more wiggle room when negotiating your purchase. These engines are super proven. They're used in all sorts of different vehicles. First-gen Tundras all have them. I think some of the Land Cruisers had them. Honestly, they're just a bulletproof engine. These things are gas hogs. That is one of their downsides. It's claimed 15 to 18 on a stock rig. I've had this thing since January of this year, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 full tanks through it. So I haven't been driving it a ton, but enough to get a baseline of what it is and how it operates. I'm getting probably around 14 to 15 on average. I may have a little heavy of a foot, but it's definitely going to be a gas hog. Now, these things do not have a huge towing capacity in today's standards, somewhere around 62 to 6,800 pounds, depending on your trim level and options. You're not going to be super comfortable towing a large bunkhouse trailer with this or something like that, but I really don't think there's much of a reason why, if you choose to go like an overland trailer route, this wouldn't be up to the task of hauling that around most trails. This is a body-on-frame design, so it's basically an SUV sitting on a truck chassis. It's gonna be pretty robust. It's an older Toyota, so you gotta look out for the frame rust issue. There were recalls on these, just like they were on the first-gen Tundras. If you follow my channel, you also know I have a 2006 double cab Toyota Tundra that I've built out completely for an overland adventure rig. So a ton of similarities between the two platforms. It's my opinion that although these things in a lot of cases are 20 plus years old at this point with, 250,000 miles, this one has on it, with some general long-term preventative maintenance, these Sequoias should run reliably for 500,000+ miles. Looking at these things and seeing them in the higher mileage range, you know what, if they've got the track record, the service history, and the signs of being well taken care of, a high mileage vehicle like this does not scare me in the slightest for an adventure overland vehicle. I believe this is gonna have ample room for, let's say, a family of 4 and their dog and their gear to get out in the back roads and have fun adventuring and camping on the weekends, and maybe some extended excursions as well. There's a couple of different trim levels and a couple of different options that you can get with these vehicles. You can have a leather or cloth interior indicated by the limited packages. You have front captain's chairs, which they're okay. You know, they can have the typical Toyota fatigue of the driver's side fabric or leather kind of wearing through on the side of the seats. They don't necessarily have, in my opinion, the best angle of seats, so you might consider getting something like a seat jacker or whatever to kind of kick you up a little bit and give you a little bit more support and height underneath your front legs there, or your thigh area there. In the second row, they could be had with a 60-40 split bench seat, or you could have it where the center console that's in between the front captain's chairs actually gets pretty well mirrored, goes in the second row seat, and then you have kind of 2 captain's chairs that also mirror the front captain's chairs in the second row as well. Now, no matter what direction you go, the second row is comfortable. There's plenty of room for a full-size grown adult. I'm 5'10", I'm not the tallest guy in the world. There's plenty of room back there for somebody a little bit taller even to sit, and especially because my kids are really young, not gonna be a problem for them whatsoever. The third row, a little bit something to be desired as far as your leg room, but still a decent amount of headroom in there for sure. That's kind of a moot point because I don't think there's anybody who's gonna leave the third row in these things if they're building them out for an overland vehicle. So once you take out that third row, you're left with a pretty cavernous area. It's like 50 to 52 inches deep, depending on how you angle that second row seating back, and 48 inches wide. I've hauled a ton of 4x8 sheets of, you know, lumber or plywood or whatever it is in this thing. This is what I've been using for the past 10 months for all of my household and work projects that have needed to haul lumber. Also, the second row seating folds down and tumbles forward, kind of positioning those seats vertically just to give you an additional like 30 inches. So from the back of the tailgate to the underside of those seats tumbled forward, you get like 80 to 82 inches of depth by 48 plus inches wide. It's crazy how much space is in there. All 4x4 models are equipped with a low range transfer case, center locking differential, 10.6 inches of ground clearance. I know they have a 28-degree approach angle. I think it's a 20-degree departure angle. It's not really gonna much matter in the grand scheme of things because I'm going to be modifying some of these things that will give me improved functionality there. But out of the box, this thing is definitely capable of running all sorts of fire roads and, you know, decently tackling some 4x4 obstacles, I would assume. It's got a 26.4 gallon gas tank. Unfortunately, it was never offered with lockers. I'm not sure if they were ever offered with the limited slip differential like my Tundra has, but regardless, you can find aftermarket support for all sorts of that stuff. One of the things you will find with these, as well as a lot of old Toyotas and in general older vehicles, is that the aftermarket enthusiast support out there is tremendous. My best recommendation is to go and join an enthusiast group online through Facebook, honestly. TSRO on Facebook, Toyota Sequoia Off-Road, First Gen Tundras, all capitalized. Those are 2 groups that I'm a part of and actively participate in. That's a huge recommendation. I would definitely go and join some of those enthusiast groups and just get involved in them, but also use the search function to find parts you should be servicing on a regular basis, all the general maintenance and common pain points and failures. And being that there's a somewhat limited number of brands and manufacturers producing aftermarket components for these vehicles, that's a great place to find what everybody's using, get their reviews, get their pros and cons, find out what those companies operate like as far as their customer service and their build quality. I can't recommend joining those type of groups enough. Before diving into the mods, I really had to ask myself, what do I want this overland vehicle to do? It's got to be reliable, comfortable for my family, and capable of handling some fairly serious off-road terrain. One thing to note is that these things do not have a super high GVW. I think most of them land somewhere in the 1,350 to 1,450 pounds of payload, which is everything above and beyond a full tank of gas, including passengers and gear, shouldn't exceed 1,400 pounds or whatever. Most of the overland vehicles you see on the road are grossly over their recommended payload. With this vehicle, I'm gonna do everything I can to stay under or as close to that GVW as I possibly can. I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to be able to do it, but that is one of my goals. Being this is a 20-year-old truck with 250,000 miles on it, we need to tackle all the maintenance and service that will bring it up to 100% reliability. We need to dive into the items that are going to make it more capable off-road, and we need to look at the various options for built-in living systems we want to implement in this truck so that we can thrive when we're adventuring as a family in it. We're going to cover a whole bunch of the build philosophy stuff in the coming video, as well as multiple other videos in this series as we build this thing out in a subsequent fashion to be a dedicated overland rig, but also comfortable enough to daily drive. I've got big plans for the Sequoia, but I'm gonna be smart about the process, focusing on the things that are gonna make it super reliable and capable for travel, and then moving on to the fun stuff. I don't like to use the word budget because I feel like budget often implies cutting corners. That's not what this is. This build is gonna be about value and getting the most adventure out of every dollar spent. As this build series kicks off, I can't tell you how excited I am to be producing content again for the Overland community, and I really hope that you're gonna join me along for the journey. I want to come away with this with a good example of an Overland build that focuses on practical modifications and upgrades without overbuilding and over-equipping. Hopefully only what we need to thrive out on the trail and nothing that we don't.